All right, gang, it is time for nobody's favorite part of the show. This is the worst of the week. So in a week where we have talked about both Mom and Dad Saves the World and Little Nicky to be the worst movie I saw this week, is saying something. And into that world we venture into Bright. Bright is the latest, well, not the latest, but a reasonably recent Netflix original movie. This is the one that Netflix kind of went all in on, hiring Will Smith to star, huge box office draw, Will Smith, and directed by David Ayer, who recently directed the terrible but profitable Suicide Squad movie. And this is a movie that if Netflix, and the way Netflix collects its data is a little oblique, but if what they're saying is correct, and there's a pretty healthy grain of salt to be taken here, had this opened theatrically, it would have been the most successful movie of Will Smith's career, which is kind of mind-blowing, because Will Smith, no slouch. Bright is a movie where Will Smith plays a Los Angeles City police officer in a world where the human world and the fantasy world are combined. So there's like dragons and fairies and stuff. And Will Smith is teamed with an orc in a movie that is a very thinly veiled treatise on racism, where everybody is racist toward orcs, and we have to learn that racism is bad. Now, obviously, racism is a terrible ill of the world. This movie, however, does a very poor job of dealing with those themes in any kind of adult way. It's largely just lip service. That is, hey, orcs are gross. Oh, but this orc is all right. It's not very good. The biggest problem, it's a conceivably interesting premise, right? In any movie, that is going to be a pretty thin allegory. But you could do a lot with it. And you could do a lot with, building this world of humans and fantasy creatures living together decades or centuries after some great war that the orcs were the bad guys in. You'll note I'm confused as to when the war took place, and that's in part because one of this movie's greatest sins is its poor world building. It has this conceivably interesting idea or world at the core of it and does virtually nothing with it. There's very little influence of the fantasy realm on our world, right? Mostly the world and our pop culture and everything is exactly as it is in our real world. There are just orcs in sports jerseys and things, and you don't see a lot of the other way of how these fantasy creatures and fantasy world affected us, which is disappointing. The movie is also super dull and boring. The plot, which revolves around trying to find and protect some sort of mystical lady, is uninteresting and confusing. Yeah, it's just not a fun movie. It is fairly watchable. I mean, it is Will Smith, and he's a movie star for a reason. And David Ayer, while not my cup of tea, is at least a capable filmmaker. There are some all right performances in this. I don't mean to tear it down more than it needs to be. It's just that it's kind of a whiff. It does, however, get a whole half-star bump up, because at one point they're driving down the street and you see some riot cops, and one of them is a centaur. So for just a second, you see a centaur in where his top half is wearing riot gear and stuff, and you're like, that's a really cool idea, and then they don't do anything with it. So Bright, I don't know, I didn't care for it, but it is watchable, so that's why I'm giving it 2.5 stars.